Apex Legends was once, for better and for worse, a very thoughtful game that felt like an interesting continuation of Respawn's golden child, Titanfall 2. Building upon its foundations with its responsive movement, snappy but impactful gunplay, and placing it in a smaller scale BR setting compared to its competitors like PUBG and Fortnite, with the added twist of abilities, which can help influence fights in a powerful way. What's great is that they all have personality. Mirage with his decoys from technology he helped create with his mother that was used in the Frontier Wars. Wraith with her void powers and having the same face technology used by Jack Cooper in one of the best first-person shooter campaign missions ever, allowing her to connect with infinite versions of herself. You can just see the passion. The guns, while not having the same kick or impact as each other, they all had personality. So much so that led to one of the biggest memes for a shooter, all based on one gun. Which perfectly leads into the biggest innovation Apex had to offer, pings. Yes, pings aren't really new, but the way Apex introduced them became really impactful to how we see them today in most modern games. Just press the button in any direction or position on the map, and with the added use of voice lines for each character, you successfully communicated more than in an unhealthy relationship. Looking at a specific weapon or object, the character will say a distinct line for them, like how a door is open or closed, the weapon you see on the ground, a death box, the specific ammo type. The whole works. Double tapping the ping button in any direction will have a voice line for an enemy spotted. Holding the ping button allows for you to expand its communication. Open a wheel of pings of different strategies or suggestions, such as defending, watching, or making note of enemy activity in the area. It really is such a phenomenal way to build this immersion, but also a great way for players to communicate in a constant, harmonious flow throughout the game, without a word from the player needed to be spoken, as it works seamlessly with the game's fast-paced nature, while also having the opportunity to capture the individual character's personality. Not with just the voice lines, but also with the abilities and how they fit the personality of the character. With the Wraith, you want to be fast and cautious, you'll be escaping, you'll be having close calls, with her passive ability allowing her to hear voices of other versions of herself. It's honestly a really impressive way of building immersion that Respawn has nailed throughout the game's lifetime. I mentioned innovation, and I'm sure some of you are immediately confused as to why I didn't mention Apex's movement mechanics. I think they're poorly implemented bugs more than anything, and shouldn't be praised to the extent it is. That being said, I love it. I'm sure I speak for the more dedicated community when I say the movement mechanics is the thing that helps us keep coming back to Apex. And the overall feel of the game is really solid, and there's not really much like it other than the previous Titanfall games. The fact of the matter is the depths that people have found is mainly due to an old engine that Respawn couldn't possibly predict the full extent of what the game could be. It's been a gradual evolution over the years, as players are finding ways to exploit this engine. First, it was wall balancing, then tap strafe, and super glides. There are so many little things in movement that a player must consider to play Apex at a high level. I'll say again, yes, these mechanics are great, but they're implemented in a way that doesn't feel intended. In fact, years ago they had plans to remove tap strafing, but went back on it and said they'd come back to it on a later date. I don't know if they ever followed up on that. This game has evolved into something Respawn really did not intend for it to go on a mechanical level. For years they've been playing catch up to properly embrace these mechanics, and even now they still do not know what to do with it, as players find new techniques or ways to evolve old ones on a very consistent basis. Movement is definitely the major skill gap of the game. There is a few other things like recoil control, but overall how you use it in a given time really makes up how you win some of the more impossible looking fights. And there's a lot of player expression shown. To this day, while I have an on and off relationship with Apex, I will still watch Fade as I really enjoy his gameplay and also his personality. The problem is for us mere console players is the fact that it's just really hard to do all these interesting things, as you may have to buy a cool controller and assign buttons, but that is where the disconnect lies. The average Apex player isn't going to engage with the game in this regard. They try to make it more player friendly recently with health bars, but it honestly feels like a weird cop-out, a way to help the player feel like they're doing something, more so than actually being engaged with the fight and the nuances within it. Just giving such powerful info for free seems cheap, but I digress. My main point here is that, in all honesty, there is not much that is connecting the player to this game in a gameplay or mechanical regard, as much people may praise it. It's just the fact that not everyone can engage with it, to the level where you can play it the best you can in a given situation. Now, the main thing that would keep players coming is that every season we would have a new legend and guns, and these things could bring something new to the meta. Not counting how much of a joke Octane was in Season 1, but Season 2, Watson's ultimate was, able to cancel out grenades, which sparked a whole new way to consider the game. With Season 2, we had the introduction of map changes that introduced new points of interest and gameplay features on the map. Some of y'all just don't know about Cascades. And from Season 2 and then on, we had the map changes, but there was also where the game's lore started to evolve. In the trailer, we see some mystery man blew up the repulsor tower, which then leads to efforts to get the Leviathans, those big dinosaurs, out of King's Canyon. Later on in the season, as progress was made, it led to the excavation of labs, which gave us a new event, the Void event. And the Void event introduced a new character-driven POI, labs. And not just any labs, but the lab of where Wraith was tested on. Hopefully that made sense. This was clearly contextualized with the portal leading out in the sky that can be used as a way to enter or escape the facility. And within the corridors, players can find out Wraith's real name through audio logs. A reward to those dedicated to the lore. Seeing what happened to the IMC militia after the war in Titanfall was a treat, and Wraith was a representation of that. Season 3 would be when Apex would start bringing a new map a year, starting with World's Edge, which provided a whole new aesthetic and design philosophy, with the structuring having more emphasis on buildings and is what popularized what we know as zipline movement today. Season 3, we also had the introduction of Crypto that actually provided some more gravitas to the lore. What was he planning on World's Edge? How will he get revenge on the people that wronged him and framed him for his sister's murder? Well, I hope you're prepared to die without knowing that answer, as the game does not seem to be interested in giving you that answer. As beyond the intrigue and the gravitas, Crypto was a C-tier character when he released on a good day. In fact, Apex had this problem with his legends, it's just they didn't know how to make them, well, good? Crypto was cool, but in compared to the other Recon legends, it made no sense to choose him over others. Having to put yourself in a compromising position and limit movement potential just to get information was genuinely counterproductive. Loba was also very appealing, but her bracelet was limiting and wasn't the most intuitive movement option, which goes back to the point that Respawn couldn't keep up with their game. The way movement worked and was evolving, these new characters that they were making couldn't facilitate that. And it took a long time for them to actually make them somewhat viable or more interesting. Crypto couldn't use the drone on the fly till like over 2 years later, which is insane to think about. Changes and improvements were slow, and I know I mentioned it, but don't get me started with the lore. In Season 5, Crypto confirms his long-lost adopted sister is alive, and it was believed she was dead. There were some lore bits that Crypto can find throughout the map, and as far as lore goes, it's pretty interesting for a game like this. And now, it's Season 22, and there is no revelation. As, yeah, you see her again in a small chapter, but that was over 2 years ago, and it's never brought up again. And there are some interesting ways the lore has been evolved and how it's been told. We did have quests in Season 5 as well, which featured PvE and a storyline, which actually led to the reveal of Ash, which was exciting. But as you imagine, it's just now in a really weird state, and it has been for some time. Like, after Season 13, I'd say we just started exploring relationship drama for a year between 3 of the characters. There were some interesting ideas, but nothing that lasted long or held much impact. Last year, it was exciting as we had a fully fledged miniseries called Kill Code. It was well animated and voice acted as you would expect from this game, and the story had stakes, emotional highs, and was left in an interesting spot. We'd barely seen any consequences to this at all. I mean, yeah, it was cool. We got some cool Revenant changes and a new look, but I don't think anyone even remembers that he even has a new look anymore. It's just, why give us this series if you clearly cannot commit to engaging with it in any meaningful way beyond the things you set up for it? And lack of true commitment, I guess, is where you'll find the most common occurrence in the game's flaws. See, I mentioned this earlier, but Apex's core issues stem from an old engine. This engine is as old, if not older than me. This brings on a plethora of issues that ruins the fast-paced nature of Apex Legends. Issues like audio. I don't need to explain why it's bad that I cannot hear a legend that is right in front of me or behind me, but I can hear a sound of a care package 70 meters away. It has been publicly stated that the game's servers are on a lower tick rate, lower than all the other servers in the BR genre of this caliber, Hell, even Roblox has a higher tick rate, yet they've publicly stated it isn't worth investing in improvement. That is a problem with this game down to a core, the lack of investment to the players, but it feels like it's all towards the investors. Ever since I'd say Season 8, 9 to 10, I don't know man, Apex has been slowly trying to find ways to take more money from you. Yes, I understand, free to play game. However, I expect the game that is worth $3.5 billion at this point to invest more in improving the game. Beyond just the low tick rates on the servers, the actual matchmaking on said servers is abysmal. Play decently well on one game and then the next you'll be matchmade with people who clearly are in a lower skill level than you on your team, but the enemy team is just going to be someone that plays the game for a living.
Oh, okay. I guess I'm not really that good at the game, you know. It's been a minute. I haven't really played that much, so I guess that makes sense. What in the?
More power to them, but I did not play this game to learn the value of patience through my teammates. Why should I try to get better, engage with the game, or take it more seriously when the teammates I'm supposed to win with are not on my caliber? I don't care. Should I not be taking the game as seriously then? But then you get killed by a full Predator team and you're just left conflicted. And it's because of this matchmaking that I don't recommend any of my friends to play this game, as it is so casual unfriendly that it feels like a humiliation ritual just to try to play it. With all that in mind, both casual and competitive players have been turned off from engaging with this game, and that perfectly leads into the issues of this game's monetization. To fully break down how far they've gone and explain where my frustrations lie, I need to go through the history of the game's monetization. Season 1, we had a battle pass which had a slow grind for pretty much nothing in return in the grand scheme of things, I would say. That's just me. Season 2 was the start of a turnaround. It's actually one of my favorite seasons, and ooh, controversy, that's right. The Iron Crown event. Man. The event was the result of a deeper evil above the power of Respawn. Over 24 high quality skins that you had to gamble for with real money. Then once you get all the skins, you have to buy a unique melee skin for an additional $36. Just to break it down, each of the packs costs 700 coins, but there is no $700 coin option, so you have to get the 1000 coin option, which is $10. And then you have to gamble for a skin you may or may not want, which you most definitely won't get as there's such a low priority in the big loophole. And there's 24 of these skins. I'll let you do the math. And they promised they would never do something like this again. That it went against the very thing they strived for in a high quality battle royale. And to show they mean well, they went ahead and made the legendary skins purchasable via coins, so no gambling. And the collection events themselves are not bad. They generally have some of the most unique skin designs in the game and arguably some of the best I've seen for a game of its caliber. Going to fast forward through these seasons a bit so I can properly explain things better without being too cluttered. But Apex still has had its ups and downs throughout the seasons. I remember in Season 6 players were disappointed in the meta, so was I. And Season 7 actually brought some new life to the game with a new map, and in between major map drops we would get some map changes per season. And within these map changes there will be lore that would inform them. Season 8 had the introduction to Fuse, and the game's first map, King's Canyon, got bigger to help improve the flow of the game. And within the collection events, they would actually do some things to switch things up. Within these modes, we'd have features and changes that is kind of interesting. It started off kind of cool in Season 6 with the Flashpoint event, which players spawned with no heals, but the only way you'd get healed is by going to these points of interest on the map, which would also have the best loot, pushing players to converge in one setting and fight. But they had added a new addition, the survivor item known as the respawn beacon, which every player would have, which allows for, people to place these beacons down and respawn their teammates. Pretty interesting stuff, which led to it being added as a fully fledged feature later on in the game. Some events may bring things like town takeovers, which would bring new changes to a pretty barren spot of the map, and make it to a more character focused spot with unique perks. For example, Caustic's town takeover, which had fully kitted gold weapons. But when you activated the panel to open them, you had a limited time to actually collect them all before poison gas comes in, which builds upon the persona of Caustic of him trying to experiment with death, while also making for a pretty interesting gameplay scenario. Now, the main issue with the fact that these events exist and still have been throughout this game's entire lifetime is that the game is just broken in multitude of ways and on and off, kind of. I don't know, it's so inconsistent. Let me explain. I can't really pinpoint when it all started, but I'd say about season 13 was when we started to see a sort of decline. Legend abilities wouldn't work for months on end. Server issues have been inconsistent for years. Core features may not work. The whole shebang. Hackers, time and time again, found new ways to exploit the game. Hack into tournaments, just to prove a point, just to goad Respawn to fix the game.
I have aimbot right now. I literally have aimbot.
The game!
What if I just don't shoot? What if I just don't shoot?
All these things may be happening, and then we'll have a new event that will be selling you over $160 worth of cosmetics. Or a store event with themed skins. I've seen some very interesting ways people defend this monetization practice, saying, well, it's a free-to-play game. Don't like it? Don't buy it. Play something else. Why complain? I don't know why I'm talking like that. It just, I don't know. Sometimes some of you people sound like that. It's just, I'm just saying. But for one, something or someone you love, in the case of Apex, why would I not call out something I love for doing something wrong, or immoral, I guess, in hopes for it to get better? However, when you consistently have these issues for years, and they've grown to the point where we are at now, of course that's going to make a huge divide between the players and the developers. As the most consistent thing Apex has going for it is being able to find new ways to get more money from you. It is honestly appalling how they've evolved in this regard. A couple of years ago, they introduced thematic events where they give you more things to purchase, but cheaper than collection events. The skins and all the other cosmetics would then be available for cheaper 6 months later. They discontinued this very quickly, and they'll now sell you skins and bundles for $100. And what bothers me in a good amount of the player base is we see this and there's nothing about the game that inspires me to come back into it. Better yet, pay for over $100 worth of cosmetics for stuff I may or may not use. There's only so many skins I want to get from the store, especially as a player who's played for 5 years. And now, to Respawn's credit, the game has had some meaningful changes over the years with, like I mentioned, new maps, legends, and gameplay systems. Some of my favorite gameplay implementations are the class system, which gives every legend type a unique passive based on, said class. Recon characters can have enemies highlighted when aimed down sights, or defensive characters can get an extra block of shield when in zone. And more recently, with the shield upgrade system, every legend has perks to work towards by racking up damage, picking up harvester points, or doing class specific tasks like scanning a console of sorts or opening a chest. The perks can enhance already established abilities or give you a whole new one, like Crypto being clothed while in a drone. These things are exciting. However, upon retrospect, you realize these major gameplay changes and overhauls happened once every year, mainly at an anniversary for the game. Both of the changes mentioned happened earlier this year and then last year, 2023, respectively. And in between those changes, we deal with the game that I've told you about, which gives its fan base no communication, no meaningful content, and hackers, which I won't even touch on here, but just know it's in a laughable state more than I've already described in this video. This next portion I'm a bit conflicted on, as yes, they went back on the Battle Pass changes. This was made initially with the intent of calling them out and breaking it down. Even on retrospect, it is still a very weird decision to even go through with the change, and the reason behind it is just so let me just say it. Because if we take the mask off and look under the achievements of Respawn, they've given us nothing to believe in. Because you've lied about the pricing bundles, you've lied about gambling events, you've lied about recolors, and finally, most recently, you've lied about the Battle Pass changes, saying it was made in response to community feedback? It makes it so weird to me when it's been said by you people the community doesn't pay, that most of the player base are just free to play. Even though we get more, supposedly, what am I supposed to do with more skins for characters I'll most likely not use? Or coins? Someone said to me once that I could use it for skins in the store, which makes no sense. I'm paying $20 per season for a battle pass so I can get a skin that may or may not be in the store that I would like? There are just too many factors at play for that to even work. You get crafting medals, sure, but given the fact that there's now more and more events where crafting medals are useless, it just makes no sense to even think about them, honestly. You could make the argument that, oh, the newer players can benefit from this, but even then, this game still has some plethora of issues I mentioned, so why would newer players even want to invest in a game that is like this? My god. So, it's just... This is the result of your high quality battle royale. Excessive cheater issues, so much so to the point creators are interviewing them on YouTube, and they're able to publicly gloat how easy it is to cheat. You cannot go a game on high-end PC lobbies without a cheater, and if you're lucky, you see a cheater killing a cheater, yet all you get is silence as you force down another $60 bundle on us, your experiments. Now, for the game is free, don't like it, don't buy it crowd. Let me say this. We voted and expressed with our voices and wallets about the reactive recolor Peacekeeper over a year ago, I think, to the point a dev came out and said, "We learned some lessons, that will never happen again." I mean, yeah, an event where players have to pay over $100 for a skin you could have gotten for just 10 in the battle pass, which is objectively the better choice, yet here we are with the Void Knight collection. I used the term that we are just experiments to them, and I didn't just make that up. They said it pretty much publicly back in 2019 during the game's peak, and now here it's never more apparent. It's blatant disrespect, and the community has, and still are, pushing for real changes. There were over 30,000 dislikes on the Void Knight trailer, and when the Battle Pass changes came out, there was over 55,000 overwhelmingly negative reviews on Steam. People have said this isn't the best way to push change, however, I will counterpoint with the Helldivers 2 controversy earlier this year, which locked out players for not having a Sony account depending on their region, and granted, now they are bouncing back with improvements to the whole game and meta. And honestly, with how Apex is managed, I don't believe they can bounce back. For years, players have been saying it's dying, and they were right. It's just been a slow, quiet death, bleeding out silently, and the sounds were muffled by the sounds of players' wallets to help EA's numbers go up. The passionate community that was built, and trust me, Apex has some of the most intelligent, most passionate community members I have seen. They built up and they tried to be heard by Respawn, but it seems to have fallen on deaf ears. I believe if this game didn't release in 2019, going into 2020 where it no doubt gained an even bigger audience, the game probably wouldn't be in the state it's in. Hell, it may not even exist anymore given EA's record. And the cancellation of other games by Respawn, and also the layoffs they just had. Apparently it was a terrible experience for those that got laid off. It comes across to me that Respawn is more or less out of touch, and maybe it's not entirely their fault. Maybe some force of power is influencing them to be this way. We are on season, 22? And audio is now getting addressed and people are saying it wasn't fixed. And in fact, it may be worse. Look, I understand maintaining a live service game is difficult, but there's only so much I can tolerate before I move on to other games. Currently, it feels like the Squidward meme where he stares out the window watching all these other games do all the right things. Like switching to a new engine, more meaningful communication with the community, better monetization practices. The game has all the sauce. It has a solid, more than solid in fact, foundation. It's just so far gone, it's hard to appreciate it for what it has. It is clear that foundation isn't prioritized anymore or as meaningful to Respawn anymore. Well, this version of Respawn, as the ones who made Apex in the beginning, have left and made other studios. I can make guesses as to why, but the fact of the matter is that this isn't the Respawn that made the game with the ideas and concepts that I love. This current version may care for the game, for the players and all of that. Hell, they may be just as or even more frustrated with the state of the game than me. But guess what? They have actively broken promises. Old ones, granted, but still promises. The most interesting thing about Apex on a consistent basis is the store sales. So many content creators who used to be passionate about Apex have nothing to talk about, and neither do I. I want to close off this video and say I loved this game. The worlds created, the characters, and the movement. I hope that love can be seen in this video. I know it may have been muddied, but this needed to come out. It's just the fact that while I love all these aspects of the game, it's just muddied in a game like Apex. It makes it hard to love. I'm sure there are people at Respawn who generally adore the game as much as I do and want to do right by the community, but it's clear they have their hands tied or are limited in some regard. We have played this dance for years of you saying one thing but your actions, or better yet inaction, says another. This is why we see the game's numbers dwindling. Even when a whole new map arrives, it is now reached lower than 100,000 on Steam. The content creators have no new things to talk about. Viewership is down across all factors. You can give all of these excuses like there's new games or something, sure, but the fact of the matter is that it's just Apex has these issues, and it seemingly will never change. It's like having a friend who has some bad habits. You try to help them out, but they can't really help themselves. Product of their environment, sure. But you see these habits get worse and worse, and they may also ask you for more money, and you may or may not oblige, but when you do, it clearly doesn't benefit them. In fact, they ask you for more money and they are still worse off. They don't listen to you when you're concerned. You feel kind of isolated being with them. And there's a certain point for people when they have enough and there's nothing left to say, and all you can do is just walk away. Fucking cooked, holy shit.